Jamie Austin here, and welcome back to Real Estate of Mine. We're so happy you could join us. Today's special guest is Kate Phinney, attorney at law. Now, I'll just confess, like Kate happens to be one of my best friends. But more so, the reason why I love having her on the show, not only is she beautiful and articulate and smart as a whip, but it really, we dive in many times into real estate conversations. And so I had the pleasure of traveling to Florida recently to meet her mother. I said, look, I can't live this long without knowing from which stock you came from. So I need to meet your mother. And now it made so much sense after I did. So one of the things we discussed when we were there was her mother was telling us stories. And I thought it was fascinating and real estate, real of mind worthy to have on the show. So Kate, your mother started investing in real estate at a time when women were not necessarily encouraged to do so. So what do you think your mother sort of had figured out that several people around her did not?
Yeah, so one of the things that I think I have to talk about my mom is that she is a very confident individual. So I think
Mhm.
that one of the things you need to do is go into real estate with confidence, and that's something that she relayed to me. Now, one of the things, and this is not necessarily a plug, but also having the right people around you to educate you on what to do, how to do it, really having those people that you can rely on, I think is really important. So she started at a really young age and just encouraged me as a woman to feel confident in that space. I think for a long time, for various different reasons, women didn't necessarily feel that confident entering into the real estate market. And so now, I think that it's really important to walk into that space. Not with overconfidence, with having all the education and all the people that you need surrounding you to do your research, to get multiple points of view sometimes. Sometimes
Mhm.
if you don't drive with the people that you're working with, sometimes just it's required that you go out and do your own research and get a few different opinions. But also understanding that, there is something to be said in the real estate market for your gut's going to tell you a lot of what you should be doing. If you're
That's
ready to
right.
make a purchase, where you want to make a purchase, if you think that location is more important than size, or, if you really
Mhm.
think you're going to look for something that's, helpful for the space you need for your dogs or something you're trying to do in the future.
Well, one of the things I loved about your mom is that she kept her grades up so much that she was paying for her college tuition with good grades, with scholarship, and she was taking the student loan money and investing in her first pieces of real estate, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that many people, especially this was decades and decades ago, where first of all, if you were a woman and getting a college education, well, that was something. But then to top it off, most people were like, great, I got a college education. Now I'm waiting for the spouse and for my life to begin with a partner, which kind of leads into you started investing in real estate while you were still in college.
Yeah.
And what do you think gave you the confidence to start acting on that before you had the perfect job, the perfect income, or the perfect life situation?
Yeah, so I think for me, it was really my mom telling me that I could, and my father having a really good
Bingo.
understanding as well. Um, my father was into commercial real estate, and really believed in looking at industrial and commercial properties. So that was something that was kind of scary to me because those are huge properties, but at
Right.
least I had seen him being involved. And then my mom had had this, like you said, real estate background, where, she had done so well in school that she was taking out this money and essentially flipping houses in the Chicago market,
Which
which
I
was a
thought
foreign
was
market to her because she
brilliant.
moved there when she was
Yeah.
very young. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, this is in the late 60s, early
I
70s when
was like,
she's doing
what
this.
a gutsy move for a lady to do that.
Yeah.
Flipping homes while she was getting an education. That is
Yeah.
brilliant.
So I think for me, it was like I had fewer impediments. And so if I have
Hmm.
fewer impediments and here's my mom supporting me and I think that everybody has different things that they do as they grow up to try and, child rear. My moms were not necessarily the most traditional, but some of the best stories I've heard are when people say, I know you're doing this project about the stock market. So here, I'm going to give you 50 bucks and you can invest it however you see fit. I'm using 50 bucks as to like when I was a kid. But I think giving your kids some real life experience and telling them, here, try this out. Like I'll help you. I'll hold your hand through it and let's see what you learn through this life experience. And so, that's what she did. She helped me financially to buy my first condo, and then transitioned everything over to me when I had that better job and when I could pay off everything. And then honestly, like we were working together to sell the property to other people in the family, put the
I love
property on the
that.
market when it was dropping, and she taught me all about variable rates and different ways that I could use the market to my advantage. So
And then
really
also
good
paying
learning.
it forward to family, which is amazing,
Yes, for
which is
sure.
great.
For sure.
Now, you actually then graduated and became an attorney.
Mhm.
So as an attorney, like you've seen people make some very careful, rational decisions in their life. Why do you think that there's still some section of like really intelligent people that still hesitate to invest in real estate?
Yeah, that's it's an interesting one. I think it's a scary undertaking because it is such a large purchase. I think for
Mhm.
some reason people don't have this hesitancy when it comes to vehicles, which I find
Right.
odd because we're talking in an appreciating asset usually, especially where we live, versus depreciating assets. So you should be more inclined
Absolutely.
to do real estate.
And
Um,
knowing the difference between the two would help.
that's true. I do think also, our education system, I mean, I went to some fantastic schools, and our education system doesn't necessarily teach life experience. It doesn't really teach you how to do your taxes. It doesn't teach
Yeah,
you how to, invest in real estate. So I think, introducing some of those courses into our education models would be really helpful.
would be
Um,
fantastic.
yeah,
Yeah, I
I
totally
also think
agree.
if you're interested in real estate, find a mentor, find somebody that knows a lot, that has bought and sold, that works in the space to be able to kind of guide you along. Um,
Absolutely.
and also be really open to being a sponge because I think that it's such a great area to learn different markets, to learn about people, to learn about, how you can help your friends
Yep.
find what they want to,
I'm
get through.
always learning. It's a job that never ever stops giving.
For sure. And so I think it's really fun once you get into it to see all the ways you can explore how real estate can really change your path. And it
Mhm.
can make you, realize some goals that you didn't even realize you had.
Absolutely.
Or, find a new place that you didn't realize you wanted to live. Or it can be the reason why you make your best friends in the world that happen to be your neighbors. I've known that story. So yeah, yeah.
Yep, that could be true.
Yeah.
Now, so that's great. So when your mother started investing in real estate, she not only made a change for her life, but she also changed your life. So
Yeah.
when you see and when you think about investing in real estate, do you see that as a financial investment or a generational one?
So I think it can be either. I think like we've, bought a property that we intended to rent, and that can be something that's financial, where it's, I know I'm going to buy this property, I can afford the upfront purchase, but I'd either like to make money off it or have it pay for itself, and you can do that financially. I think that analysis is different to see if you have the flexibility to do that. Um, but generationally, I think that I know that if you're really thinking about putting together an estate or a diversified portfolio that you can hand down to your children or your nieces or your nephews or whoever you want in your
Hmm.
generational pool,
Yeah,
um, that is a great way to do it because if
absolutely.
you invest in the right locations, again, you have to do your own research, but if you invest in the right locations, that's something that will continue to appreciate. And for instance, like some of the properties that my parents invested in that were commercial properties that we still have today are the reason that, my mom has some income that comes in.
Absolutely.
And so now that will then, eventually pass to the children in the family. And that it's just a different way of putting together an estate. But oftentimes it's a more reliable way to put together an estate. And that way, if you mix it with like stocks and other things, then you really do have
Yeah,
this
a
diversified portfolio
diversified
that.
portfolio. Absolutely,
Mhm. Right.
110%.
Which, when you've got issues in the market and things constantly changing, it's much better to have those types of, different
That's
aspects
right.
to your
And real
portfolio.
estate is always an appreciating asset, even if it is a longer play,
Right.
right? It's
Yeah.
just something that consistently appreciates over time, which is amazing. Was there the one thing I always am curious to know is that was there one moment in your life that you could think of where you were like, I don't need permission from anybody else to build my own wealth?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and I'll answer this very frankly. I have a very demanding job. I'm control a lot of different things in my professional life, and part of that is just being a lawyer. I mean, truly, like what I do is tough. I have to be tough. I have to be very strong. And there is something about the fact that the real estate world has been dominated by people that think that they know the space so well and don't necessarily let people in very easily. That there were a couple times that, especially as a young investor, that I was talked down to.
Mm.
And
I'm sure that went well.
well, it's funny because in any other part of my life, I would have immediately just jumped back and said,
Yeah.
back off, that type of thing. But in these types of situations, it made me feel insecure that maybe I didn't know enough.
Hmm.
Um, and I think
Interesting.
that it's why I tell people, I'm like, do your research, have the good people around you, because if you've done your own research and you've got the people that are standing next to you that are truly there to help you and hold your hand when you need it, then you do have everything you need to stand there and say, buddy, I got this. And so I would say that for me, when I was buying actually my mother's condo,
Hmm.
after I was going to be selling the one that she had helped me purchase when I was in college, I was buying this one as I was graduating from law school. And, I had a couple people saying to me, I think you're making a mistake. This is a 3 bedroom. You don't need a 3 bedroom. Like, you should be saving your money and doing all. And I said to them, I pushed back after I had done my own research and looked at all the different areas.
Yeah.
This was in Chicago. And I said to them, I was like, this isn't an area, it's called River North, that most people in Chicago know, that is very popular, and it is appreciating at this rate. And I know that if I buy it now at this percentage rate, that I'll be fine in this. And I know when I plan to sell it, and I have this whole plan out. And it's not to say the market's not going to change, but
Sure.
it is to say that I had done my research. I knew why I was buying in this location. And percentage wise, I made far more on that property than I would have had I bought a 1 bedroom in a different location and saved my
Love
money.
it. Because
So
you
it's
were
just a
prepared
different
and
way
you
of
did your
investing.
homework.
Yeah, it's just a different way of investing.
Yep. I love it. I love it. Now, the last couple of questions before we go. This is a little less about business and a little less about real estate necessarily, but I always love to ask it because I'm always genuinely curious. So, was there a particular house, place, or location that when you stepped inside that it should changed the trajectory of your life?
Yeah, so we had a property which you know about, that was a converted church that was in
Yeah.
Chicago.
Oh, I'm
And
sorry I missed that.
yeah, so I bring this up because I do think it's interesting for a couple of reasons. It was such a beautiful property that when you walked in, you felt that this space was bigger than a house. It
Uh-huh.
wasn't just a place you were supposed to live. It's where the congregation had been at one point. The
Yeah.
the chandeliers were the original chandeliers. You had the dining room tables were the pews. I mean, just a lovely experience, and like truly just something that is showcasing the fact that this should be a museum, right? And I think that part of why I bring that up is that that was my house for multiple years. It was absolutely beautiful location. Christmas in that house was absolutely magical. The holidays were magical. It was so wonderful to have people over. It really was a museum. But that type of property was a very specific place. There was
Hmm.
5 levels. That not everybody wants to live in a church. It's a
Yep.
very specific buyer that doesn't have little kids that are running up and down the stairs. So from a real estate investment perspective, maybe not the smartest. I knew I knew that it
Real
wasn't gonna.
specific.
Yes,
Five
very
flights of
specific.
stairs, not going to get down if you're trying to reach, kiddos on the second floor or the third floor or
Yeah,
whatever
it
it
was
may be.
hard. It was going to be not the easiest one to sell, but also I knew it was going to not appreciate that much because
Right.
just the type of location it was. But
Yep.
for me, like I say, your gut will tell you something. For
Yep.
me, that was the house for me and my husband at the time. It was
Yep.
just magical. And I
Yeah, I
think for
bet.
us, it worked for a couple years. We were able to sell it. We sold it for about what we paid for it. So you're still getting the money back. And it was a very
That's
fun
good.
house to live
You
in.
didn't lose money on it, which is
I didn't
great.
lose money on it, but I bring that up because like real estate can serve a very different purpose throughout different phases of your life.
Absolutely.
And you just gotta have that conversation with yourself with what am I looking for right now? Am I trying to make money? Am I trying to play the long game for an investment? Am I trying to just buy a place that I look around and I say, wow, and that's what the church was to me.
Yeah.
So, I think it was a really important thing for me just to understand that at that stage in my life, that was the property I needed. And I shouldn't fault myself for not just focusing on making money on it.
Absolutely, because it did serve its purpose and you loved it there. And I know that it was a very emotional house for you, which
Yes.
that's what a lot of properties are,
Oh
which
yeah.
actually leads us to the last question, which I know it wasn't in Chicago because you don't live in Chicago anymore. So, are you in your forever home? And if so, how do you know? And if you're not, what is the next chapter of your life looking to show you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not in my forever home, I can tell you that. I love my home. It's perfect for right now.
Yep.
But I definitely think that I want something that is more water based. I
Yeah.
grew up on the water. I love being on the water. And where I live has got great proximity to, fantastic restaurants and, the board engagements that I have and all that stuff and the airport. But at the end of the day, it's not really focused that much on, dining by the water and being out on a boat and all that. So, hopefully if I'm lucky enough to work as hard as I work to be able to retire at some point, and be happy in retirement,
Yeah.
I think I'm most definitely going to be calling you up in order to figure out how do we find this beautiful house that's close to the water so I can live out my days waterside.
I love it. Well, the Coastal Collective and our OC and me and our Real Estate of Mind and like the City of Angels properties, we're all coastal bound. So you're in good hands. We got you.
For
So,
sure.
Kate, thank you so much for taking the time today. That was amazing. And you are one of those powerhouses that I love talking about real estate with because I think genuinely you're one of the people that started early. So, like, you've relatively had a longer real estate investment career than most, but it doesn't really matter, right? It's like educate yourself. The takeaways I would say educate yourself and decide what that real estate purchase is for you in that moment. And like the church in Chicago, it was like maybe just to have those fantastic parties and magical Christmases at that time, maybe not walking away with a lot of money, but then you've had other properties where you did. So it's kind of a process. And I think you do. You have to check in with what real estate means for you at that specific moment in your life.
For sure.
And so, Kate, how can people reach you or just Kate Phinney, attorney at law? Does that work?
Yeah, they can just Google my name and you will find me for sure.
Perfect. Sounds great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate your time as always. And thank you, everyone, for coming back to Real Estate of Mind. We are so glad to have you. Jamie Austin, your host here. And if there's any topic that we haven't covered that you would like to see covered, just DM us on YouTube and let us know. Like and subscribe, and we will get back to you and we'll make it happen. Thanks so much, everybody. Thanks for coming back, and we'll see you next time on Real Estate of Mind.